With some recent developments in the world of gold and silver, in that they could become legal tender again in the state of Florida, and perhaps the start of a wider adoption across the United States, is it practical? Is gold and silver going to replace this, the dollar? Are you going to be able to go down to every single shop and spend, not that anymore, but this on your groceries, on buying a car, on whatever it might be? Because now they are legal tender, or not maybe quite yet, but when that bill is put into law, will that revolutionize the world of gold and silver? We'll have to wait and see. One thing's for sure, Florida is certainly setting some ground in the world right now for gold and silver. So it'll be very interesting to see where it all ends up and whether gold and silver as legal tender will become the future, or are they just going to be consigned to the impracticalities of their past, where unfortunately this stuff reigns supreme. Hello everybody, Backyard Bullion here, and welcome to another Precious Metal Ramble, where we have down-to-earth discussions about all things precious and shiny. And it's been an interesting week for the world of gold and silver, with Ron DeSantis, the governor of Florida, announcing that gold and silver will be used as legal tender once again in their state. Now, I am not going to pretend that I know the ins and outs of that particular bill and the legislation and what is going to be allowed and not going to be allowed and what's going to be able to be used as legal tender. That's not what this video is about. Instead, I want to do a bit of a commentary on the practicalities of the adoption of gold and silver as legal tender once again within Florida or any other state that might join them for that matter in the future, and whether or not it's really something that's practical. Because whilst it sounds like a fantastic idea and it harks back to the Constitution of the United States, where of course gold and silver are legal tender, in fact the only legal tender mentioned in the Constitution, and the modern world that we live in, it's just a very different time and place, and cash, dollars, pounds, euros, whatever the currency is you're using, is king. Cash is king, that's that phrase. But even cash is actually that little bit less practical than it used to be. A lot of businesses now don't like to take cash because they get a lot of problems with their banks about depositing large sums of cash and accusations of money laundering. And there are just so many different random restrictions that, maybe not so much in the US, but certainly in the UK, that are put on businesses that deal with a lot of cash. So paying by debit credit cards are the way forward. And unfortunately, I feel like that's what's really going to put the pale to the practicalities of going down to a shop that maybe has opted into this scheme and paying with fractional gold or fractional silver. Or if you're making a big purchase, perhaps you're going down there with a bunch of big gold and paying with that. So a little bit of my commentary, thoughts and feelings on this subject. I'd love to know what you've got to say, so please feel free to comment down below in that comment section with your thoughts and opinions on this subject. And don't forget to subscribe as well. There'll be a little black box up there that you can click. So I want to start with the very first thing that I think is going to be the major issue, and that is the fact that silver and gold fluctuate in value relative to the dollar. Now, like it or hate it, unfortunately, things are priced in dollars and pounds. So if there are organizations and businesses that opt into this new scheme in Florida, where you can go and you can purchase things with gold and silver instead of dollars, then that is going to be a big factor for a business. Now, there are going to be some businesses out there that will be like, well, if I take payment in gold and the gold price goes up, then I've won, I've earned more. And yes, that will be certainly a thing that can happen, but not necessarily all of their suppliers will, for example, accept gold as payments. Now, it could be that there would be a whole supply chain of assets that can be traded for under gold and silver within a particular business stream, and that might be really very interesting, and that could work very well for everybody involved. You know, just that exchange of those golden products across a lifespan to give a business all of its assets that it would then sell to customers, and it would work. But the practicalities of that are not as easy as you might think. So the fluctuations can work both ways. You know, some people might go, yeah, I might earn a bit of money on the side if the gold goes up, you know, whilst I take it from the customer and then I go and spend it with my supplier, or somehow cash it out and put the cash in the bank. But it works the other way. And speaking as somebody who's been buying gold and silver for a long time, I'll tell you that the amount of times that I've bought something and gold prices shot down immediately after, in fact, often it's a bit of a barometer. If I've made a big purchase, then often you'll find that gold drops down quite significantly, and that's just the way of the world. So some businesses won't be able to cope with that because it could jeopardize their supply chain. So they won't necessarily adopt it. Now, there are another bunch of pitfalls that I want to go into, but before we get into that, a quick word from today's video sponsor. 5 years after bottoming in the March 2020 market panic, silver has surged by more than 160%. And this is the primary reason I cannot think of a better time than to highlight today's video sponsor, Argenta Silver. Their ticker symbol is AGAGF, and that can be found in the description box below, as well as links to their website and corporate presentation. Remember, I'm not here to give financial advice, just a presentation on their business. One of Argentina's most prominent businessmen, Eduardo Elstein, with a track record in mining, has just invested over 5 million Canadian dollars in Argenta Silver, and with billionaire mining magnate Frank Giustra calling this project a vehicle to fulfill a 40-year dream of his to scale a pure silver play, it is an interesting time. Frank Giustra has recently increased his ownership stake of Argenta to 13.5%, following the purchase of over 2.5 million shares in the company. Argenta Silver's market cap is currently $41 million, with $7.8 million in working capital. The acquisition of the El Covar project was done at a fraction of the value, with a $3.5 million acquisition cost against an overestimated 60 million Canadian dollars in historical investments by the previous owners, including 100,000 meters worth of drilling. Argenta owns 100% of the El Covar project located in Salta, Argentina. The project hosts an indicated resource of 45.3 million ounces of silver at a grade of 482 grams per ton of silver, and an inferred resource of 4.1 million ounces at 417 grams per ton, making it one of Argentina's most undeveloped silver deposits. Now, with all that said, it is important to remind you that I'm not giving investment advice, and I would caution anybody to go and do their own in-depth research. If you're interested, go and check them out. There's a link in the description box below to all the bits that you've seen here today. Once again, thank you to Argenta Silver for sponsoring today's video. Now back on with our precious metal ramble. So the biggest second pitfall that I can see is, of course, the checking of the precious metals that people are getting. Now, there are the practicalities of that if you go up to, to pay at the counter at the gas station or Costco or whatever it is, and you've got a bunch of gold and silver. How are the business that are accepting gold and silver going to know that it is genuine? Of course, there are certain parameters that need to be met for the bill. As I said in the beginning of the video, I'm not here to tell you what those are and how to make sure that you're getting the right bits of gold and silver if you are going to go pay with those kind of things. But generally speaking, if you are going to be doing that, it's going to be a pain. Like if you're paying for a large sum of something and it's all in silver, the practicalities of counting all that up, testing it, making sure it's got the right weights for every coin, the businesses are probably not going to be too keen on that kind of thing. It's like the old adage here in the UK that you can pay for things with coins, but only up to a certain amount of value. And it's not a lot of people might know that, but here in the UK, coins are legal tender, but only up to the certain point of quantity. So I can't remember the exact quantities, but for example, like 10 pence pieces, you can only pay up to like £5 or something, or £10 worth or something like that. There's weird rules about that kind of thing. Now, it's at the discretion of the businesses that are accepting those bits of cash. And in theory as well, those coins can be paid to settle debts and legal court costs, things like that. So you have, and I've seen plenty of examples of it, where people are giving the sort of the proverbial middle finger to the, to the local authorities by turning up to pay for their parking tickets with pennies and, saying, oh, it's legal tender, you have to accept it for payment of a fine or a, and it's those practicalities where you see that and you just think, yeah, but that's just not that, like how, if somebody turns up and is going to pay for £1,000 worth of stuff with fractional silver bars like this, it's going to take a mighty old long time to do that. Can you imagine being behind that person in the queue in that shop trying to pay for that? And how does the business check it? Well, they're going to have to pay for machinery to check it. They're going to have to buy Sigma machines or have XRF guns or train their staff to be able to detect fakes. And what happens if a fake comes through? What happens if they, we've seen plenty of fake sovereign coins where the metal content is right, but the coin is actually a fake. There's plenty of difference there. And then we come into this element of, well, different bits of gold have different value attached to them, or different bits of silver have different value attached to them with that famous word premium. How do you attach a premium to these kind of things? what premium do you as the shop charge for a 1 ounce gold maple or a 1,000 gram silver bar? You know, there's a lot of different factors there. And if somebody's done their maths at home and thought, I'm going to go in with exactly 93 of these 1 gram silvers, because that's what spot price says is going to cost me, I don't know, $100. I haven't done the maths, it might not work out that way. And then and the shop then goes, actually, do you know it's going to cost you 97? And you're like, well, I don't have 97. So what do you do? And therein lies the inherent problem, that it is not an average median exchange rate. And the problem is that, unfortunately, the thing that we've all been used to over these last few 100 years is fiat currency. And that's what it's for. It's what it does best. It's that middle ground. It's saying, look, it doesn't matter if you've got magic beans or if you've got gold and silver bars. $1 worth of stuff is $1 worth of stuff. And that's the big thing that makes the world go round. So will this new legislation rapidly change the world and landscape for Florida businesses, for Florida stackers? Will these Florida goldbacks suddenly be worth their weight in gold? I mean, there are big premiums on the gold content of this. There is a dollar-backed amount that a goldback gives, which changes, of course, with the price of gold. But is it practical? No. Is it something that I think is going to revolutionize the world of gold and silver? No, unfortunately. Is it a bit of a gimmick? I don't want to go so far as to say it's a bit of a gimmick, but it feels a little bit gimmicky, if I'm being honest. And I don't mean that in a sort of disparaging way towards the politics of Florida, but ultimately I'm not entirely convinced that this is real world practical legislation. Now, what I can see happening is that there will be gold and silver bugs out there who run businesses, who run shops, who will be like, hell yeah, I'll take this, because there are some benefits. And again, I'm not going to quote the legislation, so I don't know the ins and outs of it. But from what I understand, that there are going to be certain circumstances where sales taxes are not applicable if you pay in gold and silver, which is very good. You can save a lot of money if you're buying, you know, one of these brand new cars that's got a lot of taxes on it. Perhaps the taxes have gone up recently because of tariffs, for example. Then this might be an opportunity to really bypass those additional costs and save you a bunch of money. And you could quite happily go down to your local coin store, cash out these dollars for gold and silver, and then head on into the car dealership and buy that car with gold, and you would be saving a boatload. I do see something like that happening. I see there are some benefits for this, but in terms of widespread usage where you can just have a pocket full of silver and you can go to any shop and you can buy something with that, I'm afraid it's a negatory on that front from my perspective. I'm really sorry to say. So there we have my thoughts and opinions on the world of gold and silver being used as actual coins and currency. It's just not practical. It's not going to revolutionize the world. It's not going to change the world. The sheer impracticality of it outweighs the benefits in my mind. But I will admit that there are interesting times ahead for it, and I think there are going to be applications for it. So we'll have to wait and see where the land lies with that. Now, I'd love to know your thoughts and opinions, so please feel free to comment down below with those thoughts and opinions. It'd be great to hear what you've got to say. Otherwise, that is it from me. Cool Kids Club. You guys need to quote me something for the Cool Kids Club. I was going to say, well, what was I going to say? I don't even know. I've lost my words. But if you're cool, you quote me serial number A02895, and then I'll know that you're cool. And that'll help one day when we maybe get to 100,000 subs and I choose a random video and a random cool kid and give you a prize. That's it from me. We'll see you on the next video. As always, please make sure that you like, share, comment, and subscribe for more.